Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, so I want to start off, first of all, thanking the host, Yeshua, for both hosting and putting out a beautiful spread. Shem Shebench you, seeing a lot of nachas from all your children, like that Rabbi promises all the brachas which come from Taharas Hamishpacha, Mechazek Taharas Hamishpacha. From what I heard from some stories of various stories of Rabbonim that were involved with people that they got a response from the Rebbe about Mechazek Taharas Hamishpacha, and the Rebbe said go through with the Rav and try to see which areas may be those that you need to have chizuk. In many cases, it was the Harchokos that they found that there was a need of chizuk. So this year being the year of Harchokos, of course, hopefully Hashem should help that we shouldn't be nichshel in Dvar Halacha to only share and say the halachas as appropriate. So before we get into the details, I wanted to give a little bit of the shkafa or the background. What's going on with all these Harchokos, which sometimes feel possibly petty or very very detailed, very technical. So of course, Hashem will discuss how within the Harchokos, right, there are those that are deraisa, there are those that are derabanan, but mentioned in the Gemara already. The Harchokos which are mentioned in Yishonim, and that's pretty much what you'll find in Shulchan Aruch. And then there's many others which B'deila Achreinim, which slowly Medama Milsa LaMilsa added, and Yisrael Kadeshim Haim and Yidden are Makabal on them, all these inyanim. But of course, it's important to mention, which is quoted and written in many of the Svarim, that although a person individually might feel like this inyan, that specific archaka, this specific archaka is maybe not something which is ma'ir me to anything, right? It says in halacha that the issue of archakis is tzvarim ha'ma'irim ha'mavim l'dei erva margilum la'erva, and for me it does nothing. But of course, we always have to remember that Chazal's, the Surim from Chazal, the Alter Rebbe writes this in Likutei Torah, right, that Bisman Bayesheni, most of these Surim of the Rabbanon came in Bayesheni. As Tuma came more into the world, Yidden are given the opportunity to engage in more Kedusha. So there's side the Nigla idea, Chazal was Yerid l'seif daiti shal adam, right? So on a simple level that means that even though a person initially doesn't think it could do anything, but Chazal tell us, they know the psyche of a person better, so we have to believe Chazal that they know even on the simple psychological level. But of course, as Chassidim we know what it says, like I mentioned in Likutei Torah, that most of the Surim of Chazal, although we were told only a Tam Nigla, we were told the reason because it could bring to so and so. But if it's an Isser brought down in the Gemara, in Rishonim, in Shulchan Aruch, Chosma Aleha, the B'Seisef and Ramah and Shachataz, it's Halik. And when a Yid is careful with these halachas, besides for what it might cause, this inyan itself, Chazal give us reasons, but those reasons are only the nigel reason. We believe that every one of these inyanim are bringing more kedusha to the world, and a Yid being careful in these inyanim are bringing more kedusha to their home. Undoubtedly, like the Rebbe said, not only those who need a bracha to have children, but the Rebbe clearly talked about the Mechazek Taharas Hamishpacha is also Mechazek the person's children that he has already, Avnachas, Begashmias, Beruchnias, and all these inyanim. So that's sort of one akdama. Another akdama, which is obviously important when you're talking about Harchokos, which the word itself means distancing, keeping distant. Of course, it's also important to remember. I'll just quote a few Lushainus, Gemara in Yavamis, which says, and this is not conditioned to Zman Tara versus Mantuma, right? Oyava kagufay, and Mechabda Yosem Gufay, loving and respecting more than oneself to a person's spouse is in the time of Harchokos equally, in the time of Tumah, equally to the time of Tara. While these Harchokos are behaviors that are not allowed to be done because they're Mevim L'dei Erva, they bring to beyond what's allowed during that time, but the respect and the Ava, that has to still be present, of course, during that time. Another Lashon which the Alter Rebbe brings actually in Hilchos Einah, it's a Gemara in Sanhedrin, that Eina Bracha La'ilum Hezar Bekovid Ishtay. His lashon is she'ena bracha mitzuya bebeis shaladam ella b'shvil ishtay. The bracha in the house is b'shvil ishtay, and therefore the kovid that one has, the respect and so on, to a person's wife is, of course, that's what brings the bracha to the house. And one last thing, which is actually a fascinating halacha in Hilchos Sukkah, in regards to the limud zchus the Alter Rebbe brings for why is it not so much the minhag that people sleep in the sukkah. So the Alter Rebbe says, because since the wife doesn't have a mitzvah to sleep in the sukkah, so mitzvah shalom bayis, it's a mitzvah to be with her in the house. And the Alter Rebbe says clearly, even ishtei nida, even if it's a time of tumah, he says, but sleeping in the bedroom together when your wife is there, that itself is a mitzvah of shalom bayis, to the extent of being a reason not to sleep in a sukkah, which is a mitzvah deraisa. Right? So you see that even in the time of tumah, the value of being machazik, the shalom bayis is 100% there in place. Time of tumah should be mentioned, doesn't necessarily mean only the zman of tumah mamash. Even if a person has a shayla, whether a bdika or a kesem, since sometimes you would think, since the Harchokos are derabanan, so one might think, okay, it's a seika derabanan, l'kula, right? But lamaisa, the Paiskim write that since efshel levarer, whenever you have a suffix that's able to be clarified, which is always the case, right? You call it of, you bring a shayla, you have to wait a couple hours, but ultimately it's a suffix that can be clarified. So therefore the halacha is that even when it's a suffix tumah, all the halachas of Harchokos become right away relevant to the T without any of the kulas. That is in regards to suffix. And one more sort of interesting point. While Rabbanim are always told, right, Rabbanim in training, and Rabbanim, it's written in it's a famous Gemara in Brachos, that David HaMelech prided himself that his hands are dirty with blood because he's working to Tahar Isha Labaila, right? David HaMelech had a very high level of skill of being able to see which, right, in the Zman of David HaMelech, right, there's still a time that there were Bikiyim in all the various colors of Dam, and David HaMelech, as Melech Yisrael, was taking Shilas Nashim, right? And he said, why? To Matari Shalabaila. So while when it comes to if someone is Tameh, to make the status of Tumah, a Rav is going to actually look to be Mekel, if he can, right? So it might seem that, and the reason is Shalom Bayis, Matari Shalabaila. To allow a husband and wife to be together, Rav will go to lengths to be Mekel, and to find Kulas, to find a Tatum. When it comes to Harchokos, once the status is Tameh, and the Rav didn't find a heter, so now it is Tameh, then it actually flips. Not only does it say we don't look for kulas, but actually the Lashon of Dar Zerua, that Tzemach Tzedek brings in Piskei Dinim, that actually kol amarbe bar Harchokos harei ze meshubach. So it's very interesting how there's such two contrasts in regular halacha. There's the derech hayosher. You don't look to be mekel. You don't look to be machmer. You go with derech hayosher. You go, sort of in the straight, regular way. When it comes to dinei Taharas Hamishpacha, you have two contrasts. When it comes to a shayla, you have a shayla, a kesem, a bdika, you're not machmer, and you're not allowed to be machmer. If you have any shayla, you go to Rav, and the Rav isn't going to look to be a machmer either. But which you might say, what do you mean? That's deraisa. Doesn't matter. That's where you look to latari shalabayla. But when there is a time of tumah, then all of a sudden it flips. Kol amarbe bar Harchokos harei ze meshubach. And the Tzemach Tzedek says this 3-4 times throughout the Piskei Dinim, various things which are machlekes. In the suffix, he says, Nochin lahachmer. Hamachmer tovei lebracha. Arba Harchokos. So that is sort of the Akdama. One more Akdama, and then we'll try to get through. We have a lot to discuss, but I feel like these few Akdamas are actually quite important for the general framework. The Shach brings, I think in the name of the Marshal, that there was a time, there was a minig Isis Gehenim in that circumstance, that b'fnei achedim, in presence of other people, people didn't do Harchokos. Why? They made a cheshbon of, a person is supposed to hide the status. You're not supposed to, right? Lahastir yem tefillah, a woman is supposed to hide the day that she's going to mikveh, and therefore it became this thing. Why should you publicize the status that the couple is in? So the Shach brings that kfar niskapsu kol rabbanim, and the made a chedim, like a very strong lashon. Remember, if the lashon is chedim, that absolutely this is an unacceptable. It's a shibush. It's a total mistaken thing. Lahastir yem tefillah, yes. But if you think about it, in the time of the Gemara, actually, they would wear big day nida, right? The concept of hiding the status, and then because of that, take away chas v'shalom Isser, is absolutely no place for that. And we're from a Yiddish. Yeah. The time of the Shas, there's no question that the status of a woman was known to her neighbors. But even if today it's not, and it might feel maybe sometimes in a person's head, maybe where's the machshava coming from, kedusha or klipa? We know now what it is because if halacha says it's improper, so even though it might feel like it's a sensitivity, why should people know? But it's coming from tzad ha'yitzar hara. Halacha says this is what kedusha means, and this is the b'fnei ha'chayim. The busha obviously does not change the halacha. Fine. So that being said, let's get started. Like I mentioned, there's deraisa, and then there's the rabbanon. What's deraisa? And I'm mentioning deraisa. It's a machlekes yishayim. That's the truth. The Alter Rebbe, however, in Simon Kuf Pei Daled, actually, we didn't have the Alter Rebbe in Kuf Tzadikei, which is the halachos of Harchokos. The Alter Rebbe in Kuf Pei Daled, when talking about the Harchaka, the time of Vestis, in the time of the calendar days, which on the sign it said we're going to discuss it today, but it was pushed to Rabbi Vidal. We'll address those things. He had some extra time, and I said I don't have enough, so he'll discuss those. So the Alter Rebbe in those halachas brings that chibuk v'nishuk, hugging and kissing. Alter Rebbe brings is deraisa. During a time of nida, it's a isser deraisa to hug and kiss. That's important to know, right? Let's say during the certain times we're going to discuss Hashem. Hopefully we'll get to it at the end of this year. If the husband is not feeling well, the wife is not feeling well, which over there, the ar hetadim, and so on. Never is there a heta though for a deraisa. To the extent, I'll just mention this just to understand, sort of to the extent, the Beis Yosef was uncertain even how, even if it's a sakanas nefashis, he was uncertain how could you do certain things, because the Beis Yosef understood that it's a deraisa even touching without derechiba, even if it's not in a affectionate way, and he was uncertain. He says Agila Rayis is Yeharik Val Yaver, even Mesiras Nefesh. So he was questioning certain harchak being allowed even when the chayla. Now lamaisa we're mater. If it's not derechiba, it's mutter, like we'll discuss. Depending if it's a husband to the wife to the husband, there's different levels, which we'll get to. But that being said, we understand chibuk v'nishuk is deraisa. That's number one. Number two, chibuk v'nishuk, that's clear. The Rambam says this, and it should be mentioned. It's just on the side. That's for ishtei nida, but the truth is for all the other arayos as well. Right? Person's sister. I don't know if it's so popular to say this, but since we're mentioning it, it's also Harchokos of arayos. A sister, an aunt, pi halacha. According to this Rambam, now the Arshenim HaMekilim, like I mentioned, Alter Rebbe quotes it that as halacha, we pass on like the Rambam. Obviously, a mother, a parent, a child. That's clearly mutter. But other relatives, chibuk v'nishuk, is hugging and kissing is something which is that level of isser. It's not a minig for Chassidish people. This is mamish to that level. Someone coming from a family which this will be a difficult thing to go down, you could call it of and discuss the particulars. So that's that. I'll mention one more thing, which is also a level of deraisa. In that same place, the Alter Rebbe says that if chibuk v'nishuk is not allowed, sleeping in the same bed is for sure not allowed. Even sleeping in the same bed without touching. Right? Obviously. The Alter Rebbe says kolshkin, if chibuk v'nishuk is not allowed, he says for sure mita achas, one bed. So one bed seems from that also to be a deraisa. Which pasuk is it? Leisikru v'lagalis arva. The Gemara says there's we learned last week's parsha. Gila Rayas is Gila Rayas. But leisikru v'lagalis arva is even you can do something which is coming close to it. So it's hugging, kissing, or being in the same bed.
The laws of Kriya Shema, it talks about all these things where you're in the same bed as another person. There's a whole chapter about that in the laws of Kriya Shema.
Right. So some ask, based on this, how could some of these halachas are a question, but obviously we're not going to go into the pulpulum of that discussion. What's the reason why Harchokos are aser? I didn't mention it. It says because since ishtei nida, you're allowed to have yichud. Why only is there Harchokos with ishtei nida, with a wife that's a nida, and not any other arayos? Because every other erva you're not allowed to have yichud with. Here, since yichud is allowed, therefore they put in other Harchokos to make sure that there's other layer of protection. So that's the deraisa. So just for the sake of sort of having a framework, I want to suggest three categories of what we're going to discuss today, the Harchokos that we're going to discuss today. First category is not bound to specific behavior, just we're going to call them Dvaram Hamargilim La'erva, things, right, things which aren't specifically defined in Shulchan Aruch, like this, touching, passing, things which are a little bit vague. We'll try to bring some clarity to that topic. Then we'll go through, second category, we'll go through 4 of the 5 senses, touching, looking, smelling, and hearing, right? The various halachas with 4 of the 5 senses, because generally tasting wouldn't apply in this case. And then we'll discuss acts of service, certain acts of service that are considered only between a husband and a wife, and therefore they're not allowed. The Gemara counts 3, and that's even though the halacha talks about the wife, it's special acts of service from the wife to the husband. The Paiskim say it's also vice versa. And the 4th category is certain behaviors which are specifically discussed in the Gemara when eating together, the various halachas, which that's quite extensive. Sitting or lying in the other person's bed, sitting on the same bench, same chair, or going on vacation together. These are things which are clearly discussed in halacha. So that's right, the specific behaviors. So that's the 4 things. So let's start off with Kalos Reish. The Lashon of Shulchan Aruch is Lo Yischok V'lo Yakol Reish V'lo Yidaber Im Advarav Hamargilim La'erva. So it says a person shouldn't be lightheaded. A person with his wife, a person can't Lo Yischok. There shouldn't be a laughter. It seems that it's a laughter which is a lightheaded laughter, or talking, the conversations, types of talking that are more intimate and that can bring kinds of talking that bring to erva. Now, what does this include? Shulchan Aruch doesn't say, and for the most part, it seems that every person, for some people, their normal is one thing, and Dvaram Hamargilim La'erva is more extreme. Someone which is very Marash Chayra, making a joke is already, Kalos Sadas. Someone which has a more of a sense of humor, they're, laughing is just who they are. So really it's something which is, this area is somewhat discretionary. I will mention, and that's something which a person has to know, that going beyond the limit which he understands is the limit is absolutely usher. It's a derabanan, even though it doesn't have a specific sif in Shulchan Aruch. Right? So someone might think, it doesn't say I'm not allowed to say this, I'm not allowed to do that. But if it's bringing, right, that level of kalos hadas, of sort of that's not allowed. I will mention some of the things which a pais can bring. Certain kind of games, it's brought down, right? So while some are machmir, and again, I'm going to mention today, going through the shir, we'll mention certain examples, and while, someone who feels that both him and his wife are on the level of taking on all chumras, and all the inyanim, all these ideas, of course, being as careful as possible in Dvarim Asurim is obviously beautiful. But again, some of these examples they're not the things that I'm going to mention, which say clearly in Shulchan Aruch, they're things which are person should do and could do if they're up to it. Otherwise, discuss with a Rav and etc. So there's examples brought of certain kinds of games. Now, the Paiskim are machalik, there are games which are thinking games, like chess and so on. Then there's games which are, more games which bring laughter and excitement and, letting the guard down, usually bringing a kir of hadas. That would, fall into a category of activity that's bringing to schaik the kalos reish. Giving gifts are brought down, giving a special gift during the time of Nida might not be appropriate, especially if it's coming together with a card and so on. More the card being the element of the closeness. But again, when it comes to these things, discretion is a very key factor of what's kalos hadas and vice versa. Let's move on to the 4 senses. So let's start off with the smaller topics, and then we'll talk about negiah, which is the bigger one. So in Shulchan Aruch, it talks about histaklus, looking. So we know, of course, that in regular erva, a person isn't even allowed to gaze at even the isha pnuya, even any erva. A person's even makam abu gulav, right? Even at the face, or even hands, right? The lashon Shulchan Aruch is afilu etzba ktana, even at the pinky. Gazing k'dei lahanis. If a person has that kind of intention.
I vividly remember your shver of Olav Shalom teaching me this halacha.
Don't gaze.
Don't gaze. By Ishtei Nida, of course, that's allowed. The Tzemach Tzedek does bring that gazing to enjoy is a machlekes. The Alter Rebbe Tzemach Tzedek says nachin lahachmer. So even with the wife, but mekaymes hamachusim, and this is a halacha which maybe could sometimes be a little difficult, but it's clear in Shulchan Aruch. Mekaymes hamachusim, areas of the body that are usually covered. And Shulchan Aruch it's brought what it is, and I'll go through it in a second. Is also any histaklus, even not now histaklus. One can say means looking, right? It doesn't mean just seeing, but it is brought in the Paiskim, right? And there's no woman sitting here. That woman should try to be covered during the time of nida, especially if it's, let's say, after a baby, nursing. So this is something which the husband has to keep in mind, whether his wife is doing it or not. The Isser Staklos, the Isser of looking, of gazing, remains in place.
Wait. So it's in Mekamis HaMachosim, there isn't distinction between looking.
It still says Istaklos. The Lashon is also Listakel. By Mekamis HaMagolim, it says Mutter Listakel. You're allowed to gaze at your wife.
So
right?
If Listakel means to purposely.
Yeah. So, but the Paiskim say it's very hard to differentiate. So one should right Mekamis HaMachosim. If the person's wife is uncovered, they shouldn't look. What does Mekamis HaMachosim include? It includes here, of course. Now, I will mention, I don't think it's relevant to this table, but if it is, people, if a person's, or Moshe Feinstein talks about a person's wife, generally here is uncovered, right? At home, of course. Is her here considered uncovered? Is her here considered Mekaymes HaMachusim? But for most of us, I suppose for all of us, that's not the case. So here is Mekaymes HaMachusim. One heter, which actually is interestingly written, Tzemach Tzedek says in the Chiddush Shem Al Hashas, that this is one area which outside, it says a woman is supposed to cover all over here. Tzemach Tzedek says that for a husband, even if his wife is a nida, the hair that comes down below the ear, which can stick out from the tichel, at home, that's not a problem for the husband. Some want to say, but for the children, yes, or for any guests coming in, that's why Sheikh Chabad are try to be careful. But for a husband, that's not a person's talking to his wife, and the hair's coming out from there. That's not a problem, even during Yemei Nida. It does include feet, right? It's considered in Shulchan Aruch Mekaymes HaMachusim, all the way down to the feet. So that is in regards to histaklus. Let's move on. So in Shulchan Aruch it talks about looking. It's interesting that in Shulchan Aruch, in the halachas of Nida, it doesn't talk about the following two items, but the Paiskim all bring it. Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, Paskin, it's Aser. There are some Paiskim which are matir. If a person has a challenge, maybe, you can talk to Rav about this. But it's brought on Pashtus and Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. The Pesach Tshuva brings it down. The following two items, which is psamim, perfumes. It's a person not allowed to smell his wife's perfume while it's on her. While it's on her, bottles of perfume which are sitting on the shelf. If he enjoys to smell it, again, that already could be dvar ha'margilum l'erva. One has to be careful, right? If that's something.
In some Sfarim they bring meyuchad law.
No. Even meyuchad law. If it's those days, I don't know if any of this exists today. They used to have some like small
bag of some.
A bag of something they would carry with them. So then that's like a dover, which even if it's on the table. But I don't know if that exists today. Maybe yes. I'm not very well versed. But perfume, it's something, right? The Harchokos writes, "En lecha girui hayetzer gadol mizeh." This is something which, of course, is megara. It instigates the Yetzer Hara. So that's in regards to smelling. And then the third of the senses is, of course, hearing. A person's allowed to hear his wife talk, but singing, just like it says, "Kol be'isha erva." So the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch Paskins, the same thing also applies to Ishtei Nida. It's also Kol Be'isha Erva. So a person's wife singing, one is not allowed to listen. Now the place can bring, you have sometimes the wife is singing the kids to bed, and that's when the kid goes to sleep, or singing Shema. These are things which the place can bring. I spoke to Rabbi Heller today. I was asking him, I wanted to get a little bit, from a senior Rav, which Taharas Hamishpacha has been his thing. What was his advice? So on the one hand, he told me something which I'm not doing, but he told me that just say what it says in Shulchan Aruch and don't bring down what it says in other Paiskim, because for some people it's too much, and for others it's absolutely what should be done. So, I just want to mention that as a sort of a disclaimer. But also you mentioned Frachsidish Yingaman, which is scared of an Isser. Right? A Yid is scared of even coming close to an Isser. So any chumrah that's brought in these areas, like you mentioned, that Tzemach Tzedek said, is careful. So, one might feel, singing the kids to sleep, singing Shema Yisrael, shouldn't be a concern. But L'Poyel, it's brought in the Paiskim as something to be careful. But of course, it says if a person doesn't have to run out of his house, if L'Maisa, he doesn't have a room to go to, right? He doesn't listen. You don't listen, right? You do your own thing.
Excuse?
Huh?
Why it's a good excuse?
Yeah, yeah. Some even bring, playing music, but I don't think that has to do with hearing Kreil B'Yisharva. Playing music is if a person plays music, that's nothing which is a question. But sometimes you play music special for someone, and that's creating an energy. So that's again not part of, like, this would fall back into the category of Schaik V'Kalus Reish, Dvar Magil Na'erva, and it's within the area of discretion. Case by case. The fourth of the four senses that we're going to discuss is, of course, Negiya, touching. So touching is the story the Gemara brings of a woman that was going around crying. Why did her husband die young? It's a little bit of it's a very sharp story in the Gemara. Of course, we're not mentioning it for the Musar part of it, but for the clarity of it, until she bumped into Eliyahu Navi. And she asked him, why did her husband die young? And Eliyahu Navi asked her, how did your husband behave during the time of Nida? And it turns out that during the time of Nida, during the flow, he was very machmir. But during the Shiva Nikiyim, she said, and the Paiskim say that every one of the examples the Gemara mentions, Eliyahu Navi responded to, Eliyahu Navi responded about the things that she said, it's good that he died young. That was the Lashon Eliyahu Navi used. But of course, the Paiskim bring it to bring out the clarity of what's not allowed. So we learn a lot from that story that's brought down. So she said we would eat together, right? So that's one of the big Makarias about eating together. The truth is, eating together is a clear Mishnah. Avera. Fifth grade Rabbi knows the Mishnahs. But he also brought about that he would pass me the food, and he would touch, and it would happen that he would touch me, right? So we learn from there the Isser of touching is learned from that from that story of the Gemara. So touching, of course, that's obvious. We all know that. The Rishonim though took the Isser of touching, and it's brought down in Shulchan Aruch, and extended it also to much beyond touching, and many levels of chashash that's going to come to touching. So this is all within sort of the fourth sense of touching. There's many dinim of Harchokos. So it says that Rashi, the Ein Klach of Rashi, said that they gave edus that their grandfather would never pass a keys to their mother, grandmother during the time of Nida. That's right, and that's the makor which a place can bring. A person's not allowed to pass. Now the Shach says passing. It's not only a small item where the chash of touching is very very obvious. Even davar orech, even something which is very long, where the chash seems to be not present. Leiplug, passing. Right, so it's a light plug and anhag of Rashi, but that's, you see clearly how the Paiskim treated the dinim of Harchokos. So passing, of course, is that's something which is very clear. The later Paiskim, Tzemach Tzedek quotes this, throwing something, right? So you're not passing the key, you're tossing the key, also not allowed, because right, we have in Shulchan Aruch, right, Zrika and Shata and Shabbos, these are related things. Throwing could come to passing, and throwing from a closer distance could bring to touching as well. Here's one area which actually the Tzemach Tzedek says is mutter, but a machmar tova lebracha, which is not such a common lashon for the Tzemach Tzedek to use, in regards to tossing something upwards, and then the other person just catching it. Right? There's tossing, throwing too. That's clearly passing. But when you're throwing it up, technically you didn't throw it to anyone. You threw it up, and then the gravity just bringing it back down. Right? So the Tzemach Tzedek says it's mutter, but a machmar tova lebracha. Sometimes when a person is in a situation where there's no table, there's no ledge, right? And if that's the sort of best option present, and the other option would be to pass it, then of course that would be
the classic is you take off the diaper from the kid and
then you throw it up.
No, you can't let go, because if you let go, it's gonna go all over the place. We need wipes.
So they throw up the wipes. Okay. Another scenario where that might be the good eitzah. Okay. This is what it says in Shulchan Aruch, and this is what the Poskim clearly is saying. I'll mention now though also some other examples which the Achrayim bring of place to be careful. Touching simply in Shulchan Aruch it says Shama Yiga B'Psar. You might touch B'Psar. That's the lashon of Shulchan Aruch. But the Poskim say touching her through clothes is exactly the same thing. And even your clothes, touching her clothes, also is the same thing. The place can bring. I'm mentioning everything, right? I'm not going to keep on saying the disclaimer. Because the lashon of Rishonim, right? I think there's a lashon of Taharas Habayis that Rashba says. This is like I'm remembering now another story. The story one of the Rishonim bring of also a similar story of a lady, her husband passed away, and I don't know, somehow the Levi. I think it was that she felt that her husband was a big Talmud Chacham, and no one came to Levi, something like that. And she had a big Chalishus Hadas, that he didn't have the respect that she thought he should have got. And she had a dream. And in the dream, sorry. It was two Talmid Chachamim, it was two this, and one of them had a Chalishus Hadas why his friend wasn't respected properly. And he had a dream that this fellow once, during the time of Nida, his wife passed by and he touched her clothes. He wasn't careful, right? So you see from there, even like a mistaken touching is brought down again. This is not written in Shulchan Aruch, but the lashon of Rishonim is even a lashon that the Taharas Habayis I mentioned before. It says chas v'sholom, Shema Yiga chas v'sholom, right? So even though it's unintentional, but that is a lashon. That is a lashon brought down.
That's a chizuk to the Beis Yosef.
Right. That it's chashash deraisa. So whenever being in a close proximity, a close space, the place can bring, a simple example of we're going under the umbrella together. If you're maybe across the street and you have a big umbrella, then the concern is not so big. But if you're going to be walking down the street for 5 minutes and you're holding the same umbrella and you're trying to catch yourself safe from the rain, it's almost inevitable. The place can bring learning together for Meshach Zman from a same sefer. Right? It's these are various examples where the concern can be pretty obvious that that might happen. Another example where there's a chash nagia, even though it's not mamish passing, holding the same thing together. Let's say you have a double stroller and mami tati and Yankele are pushing the stroller. That's also it's holding the same item, even though it's not passing. Right? The place can bring. That's also holding the same item at the same time together. Another example, which isn't Taishata, but again, the place can bring it, is if she's holding a purse and you have to take the keys out of the purse. So you might think, no, she's not passing me any keys, right? But also, taking anything out from something that she's holding is the same idea.
That is, if
some say even more. Again, these are things which are clear in Shulchan Aruch, but these are areas which the Achrayim and they bring it as areas the Chumrah. You push a stroller, right? And while it's moving, the other person catches it to continue going. So it's like a derech zrika. You're catching what that person threw, right? So the poskim bring when it comes to again this inyan of Harchokos, like we mentioned. It seems that the way the poskim see it is, even though these are l'shenis of Rishonim, but they gave it the full absolute kedusha that these are things which are really halik, and therefore we go to that extent.
What about a kid when you have one parent's holding one hand, one kid's one
hand,
the other parent's
right? Okay, very good. Right, that's another very nice example. So if you have a 3-year-old which walks on their own, that's not a problem. There's nothing that you're holding together. When you're talking about a baby, a 1-year-old or 1.5-year-old, which just come walking, right? So you're almost assisting in their walking, and you're halfway holding the kid. That's already a different story, and that's mamash shata. You're mamash holding the kid. You're mamash holding the kid together.
What about the Moshe Shabbos when to read together from the same Seder?
Right. So there it's 3 minutes. If you're very careful, it seems that's the minig Yisrael. Right? So again, these aren't things which are written in Shulchan Aruch. So
shouldn't both hold the Seder, right?
No, that's for sure not. Yeah, that's mamish shata. That's mamish like passing. You're holding the same thing at the same time. For sure not. If it's on the table and you're careful of touching, it's a 3-minute thing. It would seem to be perfectly fine. Like I mentioned, if it's in Shulchan Aruch, you can't learn from the same Siddur, then there's something to talk about. You can say, I'm going to do it, but I'll be careful. But it's not in Shulchan Aruch. These are just examples the place can brought. If you're going to learn together for half an hour, and you're going to get into it, it's going to end up in that space. Okay. let's move on. Oh, one more example, which this Tzemach Tzedek brings, even though other places come mekel, blowing something off someone's shoulder, the other person's clothes, right? So someone sees some dust. So obviously, brushing it off with your hand, that's mamish touching your clothes. But even blowing also is brought that one's not allowed.
What, a fan?
Oh, so a fan is, again, it's on Shulchan Aruch. A fan is blowing air. Many say the reason why it's blowing the something off is because there's the story in the Gemara about someone that blew the dust off someone's Dayan's coat, and he said, "I can't be your Dayan anymore." He saw it as sheikhat. In other words, it was considered something of great affection, right? But holding a fan. So some of the places can bring. I think in the Chidah says, a blowing fan, and when it's cold ear, that's something which could be considered intimate, right? You're blowing ear, so it's like coming from you. Some say even holding a fan, but these are things which again aren't the Shulchan Aruch and Hamachmir. I guess you can say Tavei L'bracha. Okay. Oh, one last thing which is also within a negiah, is you have a match. If someone smokes to light the cigarette from the match, or if someone's cold to hold the candle or the heater to make the other person warm. These are things which are also brought down in Pesach Tshuva, in Shulchan Aruch, as considered negiah. When it comes, however, to Meirei Eish, there's nothing warm. That's not a problem. Fine. So that is in the senses. We're up to now, like I said, the acts of service. Right? This is category number 3, and we have category number 4 after that. Well, maybe we'll even finish. Maybe.
Something to smell.
Something to smell. Some bring that, let us smell perfume that's honor. It doesn't seem that that's the concern, but I would say concern, at least when I smelled some, many times I touched the psalm. You need to get the smell. So then, right? It's negiah. I think it's a pretty close chashash for negiah. So that being said, we're up to acts of service. So the Mishnah says, it's a Mishnah, anything that a woman generally does for her husband, she's allowed to do, even when she's tummy, besides for 3 things. What are the 3 things? The Gemara says, Zigas HaKos, which simply means, there's a machlokes what it means. Either it means those days it was a whole thing, they would pour water into the wine and make a perfect mix. But the Pais can bring it means, today, it would mean simply pouring a glass of wine. The second thing is, Yitzikas Raglayin, pouring water to wash Panav Yadav Raglov, to wash his hands, face, and body. And the third item is Hatzos Amita, setting the bed. That's the 3 things. Let's discuss a little bit what those 3 examples, what those 3 things actually mean on a practical level. When it comes to pouring wine, so first of all, the Paiskim, even though some things, the Ramah says, just like pouring wine, it also applies to preparing food. However, these things are only b'fanav. This is something which is usher only in the presence of the...
Wait, preparing a plate of food?
Preparing a plate of food. This is actually something which to me was chiddush when I was chazering, because a lot of times you bring the main dish to the table, right? You're serving, and it's natural, right? That either one or the other, whoever's setting the plates for everybody. So some want to say that if you're setting 4 plates for your husband and for your wife and for the other kids, and then everyone just picks, that's not a problem. But many times, the one for, especially when there's little kids in the house, the one for the parent is going to be a little different than the one for the kids. That's a problem. That's something which maybe will be a chiddush of tonight for my review.
In the presence? Or?
Yeah, only in the presence. If you're doing it in the kitchen, no problem. In the kitchen, no problem. But b'fanav, so it's meziga and hishata, which means by water, by first of all, it doesn't apply to water.
Each or both?
What?
Each or both?
Each.
What do you mean?
Can you clear each? It's clear that
Meziga b'fanav, yeah. If you're pouring it in the presence, it's yeah. If you do it, even if you did it inside, we're going to talk about hishata.
By Michael, it's a machlokes if it's each or both.
I know it's a machlokes. Lamaisa, that's what they bring.
Can you review that?
Yeah. So I'm going to go through a few examples. So first of all, pouring wine. The halacha says wine. The Tzemach Tzedek clearly says, some are mekel. Tzemach Tzedek clearly says any mashke choshev, any choshev drink, which that would include coffee, tea, nice beverages. The price can clearly say it does not apply to soda, seltzer. That's water. That's not hot water. Some are machker by hot water. The Tzemach Tzedek says mayim is mutter. So water is, but coffee or tea, that's a different story. Here's an interesting thing though. which came to me. Making coffee, making teas. It would seem, right? Preparing the coffee would be mamish meziga in the sense of right, like the preparing the drink in the presence of the spouse. It's not allowed.
Serving
food.
not mamish b'fanav, but when it comes
Wait,
to
so that's when it comes to meziga. Now, if you prepare the plate or the cup in the kitchen, then you're bringing it to the table. So here, that's called hishata, which is putting it on the table. So here, it's also not allowed. But b'payil, the Shulchan Aruch brings a few options of how it's mutter. Number one, if you put it down on the table when your husband wasn't, he's talking to one of the kids, and you put it down when he wasn't befonav, it wasn't in his presence in the sense, if he's in the room, it's not, the point is, right, the act of putting something in front of the spouse, that's considered in Shulchan Aruch, it's a special thing of service between a husband and a wife. Right? So that's not allowed. But here it clearly says when it comes to serving, any shinui is fine. So the Shulchan Aruch gives two examples of shinui. This is in Shulchan Aruch itself. The left hand, right? So serving with the unusual hand. Or this is what's many times done. You put it, the Shulchan Aruch says, karei keses. You put it on a blanket, on a pillow. Because those days, people didn't necessarily have, people, would eat on the floor. So that's what it meant to put it not. So today, what the place come all right is, you, instead of the person sitting here, put the plate here, usually you put the cup over here, you put it a little bit on the side. That's the shinui, and that's how that's how that is avoided. So that's in regards to pouring and regards to putting out. The second item is pouring water. So of course, pouring water mamish to bathe or to wash the other person is not allowed. But the Shach says the same thing is also even filling up the water to bathe the other person is also not allowed. So filling up the bath for a spouse is not allowed. Or that would be a very... so negel basar isn't considered, since it's a washing for mitzvah, it's not washing to clean the person, filling up negel basar for the other person is allowed.
Like serving it, not just filling it up. Like
serving is an issue for eating. The issue with filling up is the filling up. Nothing to do with eating. If you fill up the bath though, shalai b'fanav, then it's actually allowed, right? So the shalai b'fanav is mutter. Shini is what doesn't help. Shini only helps when putting the food on the table. When it comes to setting the bed, which we're going to discuss soon, doing it with the left hand doesn't help, and filling up the bath with the left hand doesn't help. But if it's done shalai b'fanav, it's done not in the presence of the spouse, that is allowed.
Even the bed?
What?
Even the bed?
Yeah, not in the presence is allowed. Yeah.
The man sets the bed for the wife.
So here's an interesting thing. While the Tzemach Tzedek says that the pouring of wine is what isn't allowed, vice versa, the Paiskim will say, Harchokos and other Paiskim, and I spoke, this is broadly accepted, these acts of service that are special between a husband and a wife, although the Gemara, and usually maybe it's the wife, it's a special service of a wife to a husband, the Paiskim say, for the husband to the wife is also. So, like I said, putting the food in front is not allowed, preparing, filling up the bathtub in their presence is not allowed. Interesting example, though, which is brought, is modern day, right? Who's filling up barrels of water to wash? You just turn on the sink. So here's an interesting thing: if if the spouse is holding his hands is under the sink and turning on the water, right? So that's considered you're pouring the water, the first gush. If, however, you open up the water and the water is already running, right? It's not anymore considered you pouring it. Now it's just the city of Toronto pouring it. So at that point, it's allowed. For sure, if you're filling up a keli, right? Because you're not filling up the keli. But even the hands, so actually washing the hands, I think I saw if the wife, or if you've turned on the water to wash your own hands, you could leave it on. To turn it on to directly wash the hands, that would be considered like filling up a keli for the other person to wash, which is not allowed. Right? But if it's to fill up a keli, then it's 2 steps away, So again, all right. So
The
these
issue
are
of the zrika, like if she's holding a pot, she doesn't need to turn it on to fill up more water.
no. That's if you're holding it. But I'm saying even if they put it down, right? It's not about holding it. Fine. So that's that. When it comes to setting the bed, so it says clearly in Shulchan Aruch that when it comes to karim uksasos, which is usually translated as blankets and pillows, but over here doesn't seem to refer to that. So it says then it's mutter because it's avdus. It's hard work. It's not a special act of service between a husband and a wife. But sadinim and miksa, which simply miksa is like basically the blanket, that's what's not allowed. So therefore, today practically they say putting the pillow or the putting the blanket into the sheet after laundry, that just it's not a special service between a husband and a wife. But preparing the bed nicely with the pillows and making it. So they say, let's say in the morning you want to you're just throwing the thing to have the room neat. That's not a special act. But when you're preparing the bed nicely, that's already a different story, and that falls into the category of a tzosamita, which is not allowed. Again, befonov, in the presence of the spouse. So that's the 3 acts of service which are not allowed, which are special. Again, presenting the food, washing, filling up water to wash for the other person to wash themselves, and tzosamita. One thing, which this last item is only for the husband, is sending a cup of wine, dafka wine. Shlichas. For some reason, right? The Chazal say is sending a cup of wine to your wife is not allowed. Whereas, of course, this is a difficult halacha. Shabbos, make kiddush, and you're sending a cup of wine to your wife. So here's the thing: you can't give it to your daughter, to your son, and say bring this to mommy, because that's sending a cup of wine. And that's a very good question. B'di'evet, she's not allowed to drink it. It says when you put the cup of wine in front of the person, although you're not allowed, but they're allowed to drink it. If a person put the food in front of the other one, they're not supposed to put it. But once it's there, you're allowed to eat. When it comes to sending the cup of wine, when you're accepting it, that's you're allowing it to happen. What's a very simple solution?
Just put it down. Just put it down in your thing.
No, not putting it down. Someone else will drink. Someone else to drink first.
Oh, I'm saying, but the you're talking about.
Yeah.
Or a few cups.
What's the simple solution? Of course, you put the cup of wine back down on the table. Now you shouldn't even put it there because that's giving her a cup of wine. You put it back down on the tots, and
expect people to figure it out.
And you right. Usually the wife will ask the Yankala, please bring me the cup of wine.
Can you pour a few cups? So not just specifically for her, but for the...
Yeah, and then she takes it.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, that's fine.
As long as you're not selling one of them.
It's again, I didn't actually see this halach again now when I was reviewing, but that's what's always done. The thing is, you don't even put it closer to her. That's considered giving her the cup of wine. So that is the special acts of service. I think we can close on that. Let's move on now to, we said this was the 4th area of discussion, which some of them are pretty big. We have 20 minutes. Hopefully we can cover. We'll start off with the big one, eating. Eating together. This is, like we mentioned, it's a Mishnah. Eating together. Now, eating together, I would divide it into 3 categories. And we'll try to cover one at a time. One, eating together means eating on the same table. Or better said, eating by the same table. The second category is eating the leftovers of the other one, which is a different category, like we'll get to. And the third category when it comes to eating is... the first one is eating the same table. Second, what I wanted to say was eating from the same plate. And the third is eating the other person's leftovers. The third one is only usher from the husband eating the wife's leftovers, not vice versa. All right, so we're going to have one more example, which it's only the husband usher from the wife, but not vice versa. Right? We mentioned already one sending the wine, and this is the second one, eating the other person's leftover, both from her cup or from her plate. So let's start one at a time.
Because there's nothing left after husband, right?
What?
Nothing left after husband. That's the
Very good. Okay. So when it comes to eating at the same table, of course, this is, like I mentioned, it's a Mishnah. This is something which is not discretionary. This is Mamash Isser Chazal. It's a Mishnah. It has to be treated obviously on that level of chumrah, but of course this is already in the Paiskim are brought various inyanim, which basically says if you make a heker, The point is you're eating together. So as long as there's a heker, there's something to remind that she's a nida, that's fine. So I'll start off with like this. There's a big machlekes about if there's many people at the table, do you have to do Harchokos? In that question, most poskim are machmer. Even though there's many people at the table, you still have to make a heker. However, if there's someone mamash sitting, if you're not right, usually the husband and wife are, especially if they're home or wherever they are usually sitting next to each other. So therefore, even though there's many other people there, the general consensus is that we're machmer. Although, again, if a person is in a very difficult situation, especially guests somewhere else where the chashash of eating together is even less, one could ask a rav if they encounter that issue often. But generally speaking, that's machmer. But when it comes to someone sitting in between, or if you're sitting at two edges of the table, which even if you stretched out, you couldn't reach the other person's plate, even in between Lubavitch and Rabbanim, many are mekel. Tarak halacha is machmer. So this is an area which is a clearly a personal chumrah that one can take on. So let's talk about when you are actually sitting next to each other. It's regular dinner, right, during the time of Tumah. What are the akedim that one can do to be allowed to eat at the same table? So, of course, the simple heker is you put something in between. Now, putting something in between, right, your ring of keys, something which is noticeable. Now, it is somewhere machmer that has to be something which is elevated. It can't be like a little ring on the table, because in Hilchas Basa B'cholav, we learned something in the Halachas on Basa B'cholav, right? When two people, one person's eating meat, the other person's eating milk, right? It's in Peches, it talks about the various things you do to make a heker. But so the Taz of this says it has to be something which has, makes a statement. But many poskim say that it does not apply by Harchokos. Even a ring is good enough, as long as both spouses have to know what that heker is.
In Peichas, there's separate placemats or something.
We're going to get to the various examples. That's the simplest thing. Now, that's when you're putting mamash something which has no place on the table. You're putting it on the table. I'll give a few other examples which are Tzemach Tzedek brings. Even let's say bread. Of course, you're eating bread on the table. But if you take one slice of bread and you put it there and you make up, okay, this is going to be the heker, and no one's eating this bread during this meal, that's fine. Or if let's say there's usually a candelabra on the table, there's a thing of flowers, but usually it's in the middle, and now you put it over here, that's good enough also. If you change its place, it's not in its usual place. Tzemach Tzedek gives an example of a candelabra, or a thing of flowers. That would also be right. These are some things which sometimes
by the
can
bread,
be.
the condition is by the bread.
You can't eat it. Yeah, it has to be clear they're not eating it by that meal. And the last example is like what Yaakov mentioned, placemat. Now, placemat is actually very interesting. That could be sometimes the most unassuming, right? You're sitting at a table sometimes with other people. Actually, remember 2-3 years ago, my daughter asked me one day by supper. My daughter asked my wife one day by supper, why are you always putting things on the table during supper? It was after one of the babies, so it's like for a month long. So that was right. So that's something which at home you don't think, at least with the little kids, there's anything to be concerned. But when you're by a Shabbos table and you don't really have the ability to run what's going on, to move flower pots and things like that. So what a possible solution is, so placemats. So one thing is you put so placemats doesn't have to mean that you each have a placemat. If one has a placemat and the other one doesn't, that's also a heker.
Anyway, it's much more beautiful if the Shabbos, if everybody has placemats on a plate.
What?
I'm saying the Shabbos with many people.
Yeah, if you're the balabas, you can do that. If you come with placemats, so that's one thing. So what's a simple thing? You put a napkin under your plate. Right? Everybody notices. And here's another interesting thing the place can bring. You could put a plate under your plate. Now it has to be noticeable, right?
Also, when
Not
people
the same
when
thing.
people start, they would make a bigger plate and a smaller plate.
Two plastic plates.
Two plastic plates you can't see. But let's say I'm wondering, like these plates. I don't know. I don't think you can see it all. But
People sit at the table with a bigger plate and then a smaller plate. So
Two plates of china you could see.
Well.
Saying people usually.
Anyway, the point is, right? You could sometimes be a little creative. The point is that the heker has to be in place.
Does the hecker have to be between the husband and wife, or it could be just on the table?
So for sure, it has to be between the husband and wife. It's discussed in Shulchan Aruch. The question is, it has to be mamish between the plates, or let's say, right, if our plate is here and here, is like here also good. So it seems that the some are machmer has to be mamish between the plates. So but between the two of them. But if you're sitting at the table, right, then it's in the middle of the table. That's not a hecker between the two of you. It has to be a hecker between the spouse.
If you're doing it every week, all the time, or every day, all the time,
Then it's not a hecker.
So it has to be something you're definitely
And a
doing
placemat?
during
Yeah.
the.
Placemat, if you do it all the time, is also not.
Right. That's what.
What placemat?
So
also?
placemat. Actually, some in Furish it says by Basa B'cholov, if two people are eating parev and then on a different placemat, and then they brought Basa B'cholov, you'll continue eating. So they learn from there that if you always eat on a separate placemat, it's also fine.
Okay, if you're separate placements, you're saying that's also for this?
Yeah.
Napkin has to be on the entire plate, or just like in the corner or on the edge of the plate?
I don't know if that's a placemat. If it's on the corner, it doesn't sound like a placemat.
Can it be a
But again, you could ask Rav. I'm not making achra. It doesn't sound like a placemat. It's again, if it's a placement, then it's a placement. If it's a hecker, then it's a hecker.
Right.
If it's not a hecker because it's just a napkin on the table, so then it has to be a placement. That's what I would imagine. I want to move along unless,
Bennett napkin.
Okay. So that's in regards to table. Now there's a more important halacha which hecker does not help with. Eating from the same plate. Now eating from the same plate might sound like, oh my gosh, who's eating from the same plate? Those days, it was apparently a normal thing. And maybe in certain countries, it's a normal thing.
Bowl of chips.
What?
Bowl of chips.
So where it does become practical is a bowl of chips, a bowl of popcorn, or you're eating from there's the cream cheese, things like that. That's where this could become a question. So the Taz actually talks about it, and he says if it's a plate with big items and you're going to put it on your own plate, then it's fine. That's not called eating from the same plate.
Putting the table in front of you the same.
So that's a very good question. Rav Moshe says yes, but from the Tzemach Tzedek, and many places can say you have to put it in takeli. Now,
Napkin.
when you have though, let's say it's a serving thing with muffins, and no one has plates. Take the muffin. Are you eating from the same plate? It's a serving thing. Everyone's eating from the. You're not eating from the plate. It's just like a serving thing. So some want to say that if it's something which needs a keli, so then you have to put it into another keli. But if it's something which doesn't even need a keli, it's a donut. It's a cookie, right? So that's something which Moshe says he's makel, but many want to say you're eating from the same plate, put it down, and then eat it. Same thing is you're taking cream cheese, putting it on your bread, put it down, and then eat it. Although, like I said, some want to be makel because you're not eating straight from the thing. You're putting it down on your bread already, and then you're eating it. So you're not eating the bread came from. But that is right. There's a bowl with challah, right? You put all the bread, challah pieces again, all those things. You want to get away from kaira achas, you put it down first. Then you're good to go. Item number 3 said was leftovers. So, by the way, with the cream cheese, there's another chashash of leftovers, right? You're eating from the other person's leftovers. Could be another concern.
Why only in the cream cheese? Why not the cream cheese?
If it's not something,
It's
not something.
Right,
that
you say
somebody
why not by
else
the
would
popcorn
call
or
It's something that nobody.
No, so I think about the
else
cream
would
cheese
do,
because a lot of
nothing eating.
times, right, you take a bunch of cream cheese and then you put back whatever you didn't have to use. Right?
What's that door of
That's why this-
leftovers? If she ate from a bowl
So we're gonna get there. We're gonna get there. So the question is, what's considered leftovers, right? A person has a plate and they didn't eat any of the green beans. Let's say, so with the green beans left over, they never ate green beans. So Moshe Feinstein writes that every item in the plate is its own item. Now you can't eat from the same plate as a separate halacha, right? Once that person finished eating, though, you're not eating from the same plate anymore. They finished and now you started, right? But it's leftovers. But if, let's say, there's 2 pieces of chicken and one of the pieces of chicken weren't even touched, is that leftovers? So Ramesha is makel. Every item is looked at its own, and leftovers is only the item that was eaten from. But from the Pischei Tshuva, actually it's mashma to be machmer. So again, this is an area which.
So just be medayek.
And drinking, of course, a cup, there's no question, right? Drinking leftovers of a cup is
That
not
means it
allowed.
was her plate.
Huh?
In other words, if she ate from a popcorn thing that's not leftovers, is that?
Yeah, something which was designed for everybody, there clearly we don't call it leftovers. The reason why I said with the cream cheese is because then a lot of times things are put back.
So what if it's put back? So what if it's put back?
Then you're taking her leftover. Then it's leftover from what she.
It didn't eat from that spoon.
Huh?
It didn't eat from that spoon.
If it's leftovers, that's right for the whole world to eat.
Yeah, but still.
Again,
Again, like I said, Sodom Kilim. I'm mentioning, like I said, we're not making the disclaimer again and again.
Is there
Leftovers generally means a person drank a half a cup and you're drinking the rest of their cup. The person ate from their plate, and they ate half of the rice and you're eating the rest of the rice, which you wouldn't do that by any random person. So it's a kidduv, you can't eat the person's leftovers. That's the simple halacha, and it should be mentioned when it comes to leftovers. The Shulchan Aruch says why should it go to waste? If you're still hungry, you're still thirsty, you want to. So the Shulchan Aruch brings 2-3 solutions of what can be done that you could eat the other person's leftovers. Solution number 1 is if she left the room already, shalai b'fanaha. Shalai b'fanaha, you're allowed to drink or eat her leftovers. Not shalai b'fanaha. She left the room. I shouldn't say shalai b'fanaha. We talked about setting the bed and filling up water. That's shalai b'fanaha. So even if she turned around, you're allowed to. But when it comes to here, I'm just telling you what it says in Shulchan Aruch. If she left the room, there becomes the question: what if she came back in the middle? Right, so some are machmir there too. But there many say snatch the potato chips. But it should be mentioned if somebody. The second heter is if someone else ate in between. Right, so if you gave to your kids in between, and then you continue. So many want to say if you started a heter, that you came back in, so somebody else ate in between. Who's the someone else? Yourself that ate a minute ago when she wasn't in the room. So that's the second heter. So again, if she left the room, if what's it called?
Somebody ate in between.
Someone ate in between. And the third one is if you don't know that she ate from the plate. So she ate from a plate, right? But you don't know. So it's not pshat that you're in the other room and you didn't see. If you don't know. And she doesn't have to tell you. Well, that's the halacha says. She doesn't have to tell you. But if you don't know, that's fine. So that's the 3. Oh, and the fourth item. Fourth item is if it's moved from plate to plate. Or poured to a different cup. Even if it's poured back to the same cup, it's fine. So that's the 4 solutions for eating the other person's leftovers. It should be mentioned though. Let's say if you're talking about with rice or potatoes, chopped up potatoes. So there it's changing the plate and putting it back. Changes the whole arrangement. So it's obvious, right? Changing. But let's say if you ate a half a piece of chicken, changing it from plate to plate doesn't make it oishiraim. It's the same halfway eaten piece of chicken. The changing of the plate has to change the it's not any more leftovers. If it's an item which the changing of the plate doesn't change it being a leftover, that doesn't work. Fine. So that is the 3 items of eating. Same table, same plate, and same yeah. Eating or drink. I said by drinking we didn't have any of these complicated definitions. By drinking it's very simple, right? Bag of chips. So here's an interesting. What if you're traveling in the car? So eating from the same bag of chips, that's kairachas. So it's for sure not allowed. Even if though you want to say it's maybe not shirayim, maybe yes shirayim, maybe not shirayim, because it's a bag meant for many people to eat from. So if it's a bag meant for only one person, for sure, it's also shirayim. But even if it's a big bag, so you want to say it's not, but it's kairach, you're eating out of one plate. But what about if you're eating? Let's say you're going on the train, or you're driving. You have to have a hecker.
But it's not about the table.
The inya of a hecker is only when you're eating at the same table. That's the kidduv. You're eating at the same table. Eating next to each other, sitting together on the train, sitting on the plane, you're not on the same table, you don't need a hecker. Fine. I should mention, since I mentioned on the plane, of course, the Issa Negiya, when traveling on a bus or on a plane, that's something one has to...
of how the guys feel over there by the table.
What is it?
So there's some people are not.
Right, yeah. They're not as intimately connected as here. That's right. Sitting at the same table is the issue.
On the same bench.
Or one bench.
If they get there. If they get there. We got through a lot of the items. Hopefully we'll get through them all. So I just want to mention about the plane. So, Chashash Negiya, of course, sitting next to each other when Ishtei Nida, you have planning for travels, you have to go for Pesach, whatever it is, having a seat next to each other on the plane is a big problem because unless you have a first class or business class, chances are you are going to, it's unavoidable almost. But the place can do say an interesting thing. If the plane you come to the plane and changing to a different seat is going to mean that either the man or the wife is going to have to sit next to a stranger male, then better sit where you are and just be careful, right? So that's sort of sometimes you have to make the better of the worse, and that would be the option. Fine. So that covers the topic of eating, I think. Now we have 3 more topics which are all very, very related. Actually, the last 3 topics that I wanted to talk about is beds and benches. Okay, so let's talk about beds for a second. What are the surim in regards to bedding? So we already mentioned that the Alter Rebbe seems to define it as a deraisa to sleep on the same bed. So Tzaddik says even two different beds are not touching, it's considered like one bed. Pais can bring, even if the bed is attached by the back to the same headboard, is also considered an attached bed, which is not allowed. The Rebbe brings in a letter, seemingly based on the Arizal, that just the bed a little bit separated is not enough. There was a sifa, it's interesting, it's brought down, there was a sifa of Rabbanim in Europe, Tafresh Peches, now 100 years ago, they said there should be at least 60 centimeters, like a foot, almost 2 feet.
Inches.
Huh?
I thought it was 12 inches. No more?
So here's an interesting thing actually, it says an ammo, right? So an ammo, not 12 inches, that would be a foot and a half, 18 inches. That's what it says an ammo. And the Rebbe brings in a letter, there should also be a night table in between. There should be actually something separating in between. Now, although, of course, we know this famous word from the Shmuel Munkis to the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe was Mavatul Mitei Suchavim. So Alter Rebbe said that even during the time of Tara, the husband and wife shouldn't be sleeping on the same bed on a random night. And Shmuel Munkis famously, that's when he told the Alter Rebbe that he took away the Hana'os and Maza from Younger Light. So if you're not a Rebbe, you deserve the bullet. Right, that was in regards to this takana about. So there should be at least an amma and also a night table that the Rebbe brings in a letter. So that's of course something which we're careful about. Now it's probably, let's say you're sleeping in somebody else's house for a night and the beds are one behind the other. There it says, relying on what it says in Shulchan Aruch, a little bit of a separation is good enough. So when the beds are near each other, there is also, you have to be careful that also, right, that when you're stretching out, you shouldn't come to touching. So that's why there's the 1.5 foot or 2 feet separation and a night table, which is brought down. So that's one thing about bedding.
Let's say somebody has a very small room and there's no room for a night table in between.
Traveling, whatever.
So traveling, they're in a hotel and or what, I don't know. There's
An hotel, you probably get a different hotel.
Sorry.
There's no space. Again, in Shulchan Aruch it says they can't be touching. That's Shulchan Aruch. If there's no other option, you follow what it says in Shulchan Aruch. But again, like I said, right, this is Chazal, the Rabbanim and the letter of the Rebbe. There should be something. No, you could get something even it doesn't have to be a night table. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be called night table. With all the titles. The point is, it should be a piece of furniture, something, a chair. Another din about a bed, which this is actually a big difference between a husband and a wife. Right? We mentioned already the difference of husband and a wife about sending. We talked about the difference of husband and a wife in regards to leftovers, and this is the third difference between husband and a wife when it comes to sitting or sleeping on or lying down on the other person's bed. And look at this is a din brought down in Shainim. This is a Shulchan Aruch. The halacha is like this: a husband is not even allowed to sit on his wife's bed during niddah, whether she's in the house, not in the house, even sitting, not only lying, even sitting. Right, the most stringent level. Sitting, even when she's not in the house. Piskei Tshuva actually brings the heter, which is not in Shulchan Aruch. If she's out of town, you could sit. Someone will say, and if she's going to be out of town for a long time, you can even lie. But that doesn't say clearly in Piskei Tshuva. Right? If she's out of town, you could sit on the other bed. You know, you're changing a diaper, whatever. You're sitting on your wife's bed. If she's out of town, that's fine. But if she's in town, even if she's not at home, you don't sit on your wife's bed. Mashenk and the wife is allowed to sit on the husband's bed and even lie on the husband's bed, just not in his presence. Right? So if you walk into the room, she has to jump out. Right? The baby's sleeping in her bed, so she doesn't now want to wake him up and put him into the thing. Right? So she's going to lie on the husband's bed. That's fine, as long as the husband's not in the room, not in his presence. So that's a big difference between, and the reason is obvious, right? By the man, there's a big chash for here, so sitting on her bed is even not in her presence is not allowed. So that's the din of bed. Now let's come to the last two inyanim. I wanted to talk about chayla. If the Olam will want to go 5 minutes off, we started 5 minutes late, we'll be able to, I think, finish it all. It comes to sitting on the same bench. So this is also, it's brought down, I think also from Rashi, sitting on the same bench is not allowed. One is chashash of touching. But Lashon Shulchan Aruch is you're sitting on a bench that could shake, that you're both going to shake. It's going to shake the two of you. Each of you are shaking each other on the thing that you're sitting on. It's also an Inyan of Kiruv. The Lashon of the Term Hadash, an interesting Lashon. He says, that for bringing together misvaidim biyachad is the Lashon he uses. So sitting on a surface that shakes is not allowed. The place can bring. It's not only shaking. You're talking, you imagine when you read the Shulchan Aruch, it's talking about like the backyard swing you're sitting on together, right? Maybe that's the ultimate of this concept. But B'chlal sitting on a surface together on a couch, so even on the couch, it's very heavy and it's settled. It's not moving anywhere, but you feel each other's movement on the cushion. So many say that one cushion couch, even if it's a long cushion, you're going to feel each other. So if it's a 2 cushion, some say it's a 2 cushion, you feel each other. You should have a 3 cushion. That is again areas of chumrah. when it comes to, but if it's a bench, which is not moving anywhere, right? So a bench sitting on the side of the table, which is easily able to move, shouldn't sit on the same bench. But if it's a bench in the kitchen, connected to the wall, or if it's a very heavy bench that's not going anywhere, then it's not a problem.
Like a bench in 770.
Bench in 770 is not going anywhere.
What about if they sit on different pillows?
Then it's different pillows.
But
Then
they're not
that's fine,
even, so
right?
they're
If you don't feel each other's movement, that's fine. The same thing would be in the back of a car, right? You always also have to be careful with this idea, right? If it's one long bench with a cushion, right? So some cars are like this, some cars are like that. That's something you want to be careful with. And the last item, let's talk after. The last item, right? So the whole car shaking is not the problem. The problem isn't that it's shaking. The problem is that you're shaking it. You're shaking her, she's shaking you, right? You're feeling her shaking. It's not about the car shaking or the boat, right? The last item is, and this is the Tumas Hadeshin says that Ramal brings it down, La halacha, going on vacation. Now, going on vacation is brought in regards the way the Tumas Hadeshin writes the halacha, the way that Ramal Paskins is, you're not allowed to go on a boat or on a gola, on a wagon, travel together to go to parks and orchards, to, for a teal, for a nice outing. Many want to say, the simple halacha is, that means you can't be going in an enclosed, you're going together in a wagon for a nice scenery outing. Which would indicate, taking a walk together in a scenery place is not what it says in Shulchan Aruch. It's not allowed. Going any destination place. So in Shulchan Aruch it says, but if you're going for a need from city to city, then no problem. You could go together in the car. You could go together in a wagon. You could go together in a boat. It's not a concern. But it's a little bit of two extremes. Many places can bring that any time you're going together for the purpose of a vacation, the purpose of leisure. You're going to the beach together. As even though on the beach you're going to walk. Again, going to a beach is a whole different thing, right? But you're going to take a hike. So some want to say that the general idea of, if it's special, if someone does it every day, then it's nothing unique. But if it's a unique thing to be going out on a special hike together, so someone to say even right that itself, someone to say is also teal. The Shulchan Aruch talked about traveling together in the wagon. Someone to say it's tafka the wagon. So these are areas which if someone is placed for chumrah, you keep the vacation for after the Zmanida is much better. But if someone, let's say, already booked in advance, he's traveling and the calendar didn't exactly work out as he planned, technically traveling to a destination isn't a problem. What you do there, again, that's already Dvaram HaMagil Na'erva. Person has to be careful, right? Like we talked the first Yisoid, Kalas Reish, Schaik, Dvaram HaMagil Na'erva. Those don't have definitive things. But in general, going on vacation during time of Nida, one should ask a Rav, because, depending on the person's situation and so on, there could be various points. If you have another 2 minutes, I'll just mention about Chayla. Huh? Yeah, 2 minutes. Wow. We squeezed it all in. So here's the fourth difference between him and her when it comes to Chayla. When the husband is sick, it's not because chas v'shalom, because of a misogynist or anything. When the husband is sick, the wife is allowed to help him more than when the wife is sick. Why? Because when the husband is sick, what's the issue of all these Harchokos? The husband can get arrested. And it's usually the husband that's going to engage. He's going to start. When the husband is sick, so the sickness means that he's weak. So her helping him, he's not in the mind space. So therefore, there's a greater level of kula. Even there, if there's the ability to get somebody else, absolutely, she should not be going against any harchaka. The husband shouldn't be asking the wife to help him out in anything if there's somebody else which you can call. Even if you could call a friend. If it's something which is attainable, that should be done. You don't have to go hire someone because of it. But if it's if it's something which is needed and there's ability to get somebody else. Whereas vice versa.
We're not stopped there with the Raisa.
What?
We're not with the Raisa.
All right, chibuk v'nishuk, like I mentioned, sleeping in the same bed. We're talking about helping a person to stand up, helping them to sit down, pushing in a wheelchair, getting them around the house. These are things, if you can get somebody else, it's not allowed. It's not allowed. If you can get somebody else and it's a need, their wife is allowed. Vice versa, when the wife is not feeling well and the husband is, there it's a bigger level. Tzemach Tzedek actually brings the machlekes even if he's allowed to. There's days that says he's not allowed to. Like we mentioned, the Beis Yosef holds, even negiah, even touching, is a chash deraisa. And for him, so for the wife, like we said, he's weak anyways. He's not going to go anywhere. But for him, when he has the koyach, there's a bigger concern. The Rabbi says very machmer. Tzemach Tzedek says l'maisa im tzricha harbe. If it's a very great need and there's nobody else, it's allowed. Now, what's this extra level? So the place can bring one very simple example for that extra level is that if it's the wife not feeling well, you should hire someone, even if it's going to cost money. That's where there's a difference. Now, how much money you have to spend, that's a color of, if chas v'shalom, a person is in that situation, which can become very costly, a rav should be called. And again, that's tzricha harbe. And remember, it's also what's needed for the situation. If, let's say, the husband just isn't interested in having to stay home all day, so he wants to be able to bring his wife to the neighbor's house, that's nothing to do with her chayli, right? So that's not tzricha harbe, that's you just want to go to work. So it has to be, right, tzricha harbe, and you tried hiring somebody, you weren't able to, chulu, that's where it's allowed, even if it's not sakana. Some say only sakana. Some says even if it's not mamish sakana, and she's very weak, and you can't hire someone, then that's allowed. Harchokos, Rabbi, again, a big thank you to our host, Yeshua Lane, for hosting and putting out the spread. Again, all the brachas to you and your family.
You have a second to address Tisha B'Av Yom Kippur.
Tisha B'Av Yom Kippur, Rabbi Vidal. He'll do it next week.
Oh,
Let's do it.